At what point do we stop interfering with farmers so they can grow our food? And it seems the color in our world is being withdrawn as we're all robotized. And as I was looking into the Potter Valley instance where California cut off water without telling the ranchers and any of the orchard growers and those that were raising hay just a month or so before their harvest came in. Sorry, we didn't tell you the water just got cut off. This article here comes up. South Dakota ranching couple indicted by the Forest Service for offense placed in 1950. Now I would ask you, do they look like they were born in 1950? I don't think so either. So whole thing's about permits that were given to this family to use that for grazing area back in the 1950s and 60s. And then suddenly the Forestry Service said, oh, we don't know if we really gave you that. And by the way, you were in good standing last year, so we said you could use the land. But now just this year, we're going to put you in jail for 10 years for stealing government land. That's how maniacal and ridiculous the story is. So the Maud family had a grazing agreement with the Forest Service for 60 years, 60. On their maps, surveyed everything, and then just a couple of years back during the Biden administration, they're like, oh no, you're not allowed to graze your cattle. Oh, by the way, you stole, look at that fence that's there. You stole federal land. That's felony. It's over $1,000. You're going to prison for 10 years each. And then it comes to find out that this same family has had their land since 1913. Before the Forest Service, it was actually 1910, and then the Forest Service came into being along with our Park Service right in the early 1900s. And it's interesting, 1913 is the same year that the Federal Reserve was formed on Jekyll Island. So, you got to think about why were those two institutions formed, unless one was pledged as collateral to use for our money issuance here in America by the private corporation known as the Federal Reserve, not government, private bank. So they have had that land since 1913, never once had any Forestry Service given any indication that something was out of line. But again, if you got cattle these days, you're a target. And I've been hearing, a fair few stories come across the newswire of interference by Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Forestry, just an enormous amount of interference with farming in general. And then the Forest Service deference is a heavy-handed special agent tactic, the long history of abusing permittees. Like the permits are valid, but then they'll come in and say, well, they're no longer valid because, well, that paperwork slipped under the rug for 40 years, but you're now at fault for a fence that you didn't build before you were even born. Now you stole land. Like this is a kind of ridiculousness that was up until a couple of years ago. Now, hopefully this will stop and our ranchers, farmers can get back to producing food. Now, I'm going to bring you one on Oregon tomorrow where they're saying that if you have a farm, you're no longer allowed to run the U-pick business or have this fruit stands or roadside stall stands that you could have in front of your property in Oregon. This is a whole new devastation for those local farmers who relied on agritourism, and that's going to be washed under the rug. I'm doing more research on that. I'll bring that to you tomorrow. So it got to the point here with you can't arrest these people. They weren't even born when this happened. That, of course, some government officials needed to get involved here. And the Ag Secretary Rollins stepped in for the Maud family and dropped the charges. And they were facing 20 years in prison and a $500,000 fine over the placement of a fence built between 1910 and 1950. If you're getting close to retirement or just thinking ahead, you've probably done a solid job of saving. But here's something most people don't consider. How much of that money is just sitting in cash? It might feel safe, but holding too much cash guarantees one thing. You're losing purchasing power. Inflation eats away at it, and the dollar's value keeps slipping. That's why more people are looking at real assets like physical gold and silver to protect their savings. And one company makes that easy, Noble Gold Investments. You can buy gold, silver, coins, bars. They'll ship to your home, or you can have it stored securely. It's a smart way to convert cash into something that actually holds value. Visit 2030gold.com. That's 2030gold.com. Because when you own real assets, you own real wealth. And please remember, Noble Gold, fair, transparent. They're not going to pressure you. They're going to give you actual information and real options in which to make good decisions. Again, that's 2030gold.com. Click on that link in the description box below. It just shows you that just things can get out of control really quickly. And, after a few more years, is it going to get out of control really quickly again here? Is the pendulum going to swing completely the other direction? Stroke of a pen. You're in business or you're out of business, literally that fast. We're seeing the money change right now. Everything's moving over this whole stablecoin issuance. Our entire monetary system has shifted. You didn't really feel it yet, but it shifted 2 weeks ago. We're in a new monetary system now. They'll still call it dollars and everything, but it's a new system. Just like we went off the gold standard in 71. Oh, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. Well, that was great the first day they signed it, but subsequently every day after that, it lost purchasing power. So we're back here again. So the whims of the politicians are blowing our farmers across and our food supply, putting it in jeopardy, depending on who's in office. I think some of these government institutions could focus on the radioactive shrimp and some of these lesions on our wild animals, trying to track down where that's come from. Just out of the blue, suddenly we got tick infestation in the Northeast of like random lab-grown ticks. And we got all these kind of sore-filled animals all over the place. And then we got radioactive shrimp, and they're worried about a fence that was built in 1950. Like, orders of what is important seem to be completely scrambled. And speaking of radioactive shrimp, I wanted to break this down to you. I know I brought this maybe last year, this slide. I found it again. It's always a good one. Timeless classic. So how to read the codes when you're looking through the produce section. I was in a store the other day and popped up a number 4. And I was like, all right, well, at least I can wash that off. It doesn't have the appeal stuff on it. But the radiation, ionizing radiation, that goes through and uses different types of UV light to kill everything. That's a 3. If you see that, conventionally grown, like, they just spray everything. Pick your cocktail of toxins out there to put on some fruit, and that would be a number 4. Pre-cut fruits and veg, like you'll see something in a bag or a box that's already cut with the skin removed, that's a 6. Then we got our favorite GMO, genetically engineered, genetically modified, bioengineered, starts with an 8, lucky 8. But the one you're looking for is 9. So in Chinese culture, 9 is long life, longevity. So look for the number 9. It matches right up. Again, Tesla 369, understand the vibration of the universe. Pre-cut fruits, that's better than the chemicals. So here's your chart. Please remember this when you're in a store to take a look at it. And also, look at those labels carefully about the A peel. That's coding a lot of stuff. Somebody sent me this most amazing video, and I cannot find it. They had a watermelon, and it blew up from the inside just because the A peel coating, it wouldn't allow any moisture or gas to escape. And when they cut it, barely touched it with a knife. Kaboom! And also, when you're shopping for protein sources, it's for chickens. Cage free, that's the top left. That's what that means in the labeling, much as it would be 3, 4, 6, 8, 9 in our vegetables and fruits. Free range is the top right. You get a whole different visual of what free range means. For me, pasture raised is my free range. And then you got the organic, where they're still in a shed, but different types of feed and whatnot. So know what that means also with the mind picturing of what they do with the foods. So cage free, you think, oh, they got a chance to walk around out in the green grass. Free range, oh, they're allowed to run up in the forest and eat insects. Not really. That's truly what it looks like. Now, pasture raised is more where they get out. And Joel Salatin does a good job at this. I suggest take a look at Joel Salatin and see what they're doing for raising birds and how they move them along and help them cure the soil. So it's like a win-win. They remediate the soil for you, and then also they grow larger because they're eating all of the insects and then putting all that nutrition back in the soil. Excellent method, and it's a chicken mobile. It moves around, and you can move them every couple days. But I wanted to come on this soullessness that seems to be pervasive around our world. Everything is a box. We joke about it, box stores, but everything turned literally into a box. Soulless boxes. You laugh about cubicles, people, stuck in a cubicle all day. But the old McDonald's, when there's fun play things, I mean, it wasn't the best, but still, comparatively to this prison looking M thing on the front there that we have today, that was a gargantuan step up. Pizza Hut too, the nice big red roof. You can see those a mile away. No, now we got this square takeaway thing. Everywhere you look, we're being industrialized. Like, notice the buildings too, from the great grandeur of the cathedrals and marble columns that we had into the late 1800s, early 1900s, and now we're just stuck with a bunch of square glass. Different mind frame, almost as if the planet is being transformed and our minds along with it. I'll bring you Tokyo on the right and Cairo, Egypt on the left. Same, but different. Now, I don't see a lot of flowing architecture. It seems to be very much the same. Squares, rectangles, almost like a circuit board. Interesting to think of it in that term there. We see our whole world just becoming this robotized AI algorithm. I'll bring you another one here. The colors of the cars, so spectacular. In the 1980s, now look at 2025. They squared the buildings, but they replicated this gray and industrial colors into the cars also, if you didn't notice that. So go back to the flowing architecture of columns and the colors of the 1980s with the reds and the blues and the yellows. That's a vibrant society. We live in this dull, numb, AI sterilized everything. I'll bring you back to the cars. Here's the most interesting thing. Because now safety warnings for the cars. Due to a safety recall involving battery fires, Chevrolet Bolt EVs and EUVs are prohibited from parking in this facility. So even now the electric vehicles are unsafe to put in a parking garage. Sell it to you? Oh, you can't use it here. Oh, great. Thanks. Get you again, but I wanted to bring you a little bit of glowing wonderfulness here. This is supposedly the clearest picture of our sun ever taken. But I've seen a lot of, different types of, close-up imagery, especially with the sunspots and some of these solar flares that are coming off, the CMEs and the hydroflares. But it is still beautiful, no less how you look at it. But huge amount of solar activity starting to ramp up. So as we come through the next few days, if you're feeling a little skittish, strange, unusual, can't explain your feelings, the Schumann resonance is going to be pegging, and we have a huge amount of inbound energy from the sun coming in, coronal hole streams, backside proton blasts coming in, and then all those solar and those sunspot groups are coming around. Like, it's going to be an energy fest here for the next 2 weeks. So if the world seems like it's a little off balance for the next, like say 2, as this thing does its circuit and its cycle around, that could explain quite a bit of the strangeness. Appreciate you watching. Hope you got something out of the video. Pirate Chain and Monero. If you feel like donating to keep independent journalism and support the Adapt 2030 channel, those addresses are in the description box below. Please share with your friends, family. Click the subscribe bell, hit that notification, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.